Okay, let's dive into today's passage. It's on Mark 8. Just before beginning the preaching, I feel like I am walking on the sea. Do you understand what I mean? I am still learning English, but I realized that I can never be a native, fluent English speaker. As you feel that it's very difficult to learn Korean and you have a conversation with Korean people with a fluent Korean. So I prepared my script, and the easiest way for me is to read this script, but I am daring to just, maybe I may go back to the text script, but I am daring to just speak what I have prepared. And thanks to our English ministries offering the chance to do the preach, over the 2 years, I had a chance to present my academical theological paper in the conference. And every time I had a chance to present my paper, I thought of our English ministry service giving me the chance. And these chances were really, really helpful, and I don't know how God will use this service and also use each one of us, including me, into like 10 years later, 20 years later, 30 years later, how our life and how our service and how our ministry will be developed and how we will enjoy the full, abundant grace of God in our ministry. So, today's title is Don't Worry About What You Don't Have. There are two don'ts, right? Don't worry about what you don't have. So the situation in Mark 8, chapter 8, it begins with a story that we are familiar with, right? With the 7 breads, Jesus fed more than 4,000 people, and there were a few small fish. And after distributing the breads, there were 7 baskets were left. And then they moved into another district, and then there is a small argument, not small, but it's a quite severe argument between Jesus and the Pharisees. Pharisees are the people who are the teachers of the law, and they are the leaders of the Jewish society. They require Jesus, give us the sign that you are really truly from heaven. Actually, when you read Mark from chapter 1 to 7, they are full of miracles that Jesus heals the patients who cannot hear. Then they are healed by Jesus and they can listen. And who cannot see, they can later they can see by cured by Jesus Christ. And also even some people who even died, they are risen by Jesus Christ. And Jesus expels the demons, and Jesus walks on the sea, and even Jesus commands the sea that be quiet, and then the sea is silent. So they are full of miracles that show that Jesus has the power from heaven, but the Pharisees don't want to believe. And they require the sign of that Jesus comes from heaven. Yeah. Actually, the Pharisees thought that those kind of powers that Jesus do is from demons. So they wanna criticize Jesus, and because Jesus threatens their higher status in Jewish society, so the Pharisees wants to make Jesus belonging to demonic power. So that's their intention here. But Jesus does not reply to them properly. Reply to them, and then Jesus just say to the disciples that, why are they requiring signs? I will not show any sign to them. And then they leave. I think those kind of situation made disciples be confused, and it was a little, it was a very situation that was really odd. So they may have forgotten to load the 7 baskets that were left to the boat. So when Jesus talked about be careful about the leaven or the yeast of King Herod or the Pharisees, the disciples thought that, oh, okay, Jesus is mentioning about the leaven or the yeast. So he's mentioning about the bread. So because they didn't have a bread, so they thought they had a conversation between themselves that we don't have a bread. But I think Jesus' ear was really good, and he heard what the disciples said. And then Jesus says to them, why are you discussing the fact that you have no bread? Do you not yet perceive or understand? Are your hearts hardened? As we have examined, the beginning of the Mark 8 begins with the story that Jesus fed more than 4,000 people with just 7 breads. And Jesus is still here, and they have 1 bread. And there are only maybe around 13 people. How should disciple think? Okay, Jesus is with us, and there is 1 loaf. He can feed us. Why not? But they didn't remember, and they thought that because they had a sense of guilt in their heart, and when Jesus mentioned about the leaven of Herod and Pharisees, disciples thought of what they don't have. So when Jesus said A, they received it as a B. So it's not a conversation, right? It is very easy for us to have a conversation shaped like this. When we have the sense of guilty within ourselves, when there's a conversation between parents and children, when parents say something to children, when the children have done something wrong, and then it is very easy for the children to receive the parents saying as B, not as A, the loving word, right? So this is happening here. So Jesus is talking about the yeast. What is the yeast? The leaven. Yeah. It's a thing that you put into the bread, and then it makes the bread become bigger, right? Yeah. I became to have a new hobby to make a bread. So I'm not very good. I'm not very good at using the oven, but at least I can use the baking machine, bread machine. So I put 350 grams of flour and butter and milk and salt and things, the ingredients. And then one of the most important thing is the yeast. It's 1%, 3.5 grams yeast. If you don't put it, you can't eat the bread, right? So the leaven, the yeast, the positive function of yeast is to make it bigger, right? So Jesus used the parable of yeast to explain the extension of God's kingdom as well. But in this passage here, he's using the leaven or the yeast as the negative connotation, negative meaning of the leaven. So in 2,000 years ago, Jewish or Hellenistic culture, they already had a mindset that the leaven or the yeast is one of the metaphor of being corrupted. So when Jesus talked about the leaven of the Herod of the Pharisees, everyone actually already knew that it mentions about the corruption of them. So they wanted to make their behavior or their status. They wanted to look big people. And King Herod is really famous for making big buildings in Jerusalem. If you go to have a chance to go to Israel, you can see you still can see many big buildings of the Herod's big buildings. But actually here, when Jesus criticizes the Pharisees and the Herod, Jesus is criticizing their hypocrisy. Hypocrisy is the thing that you have different intention in your inner mind, but your behavior or your word, your outer behavior is different. Do you understand what I mean? Yeah. Hypocrisy, right? So it's different from inner yourself, and your outer yourself is different. So the Pharisees and Herod, they had bad things in their heart of their mind, but they pretend to be good in their outer shape. So Jesus is criticizing them very harsh. In Luke 11:46, I will read it for you. Woe to you, lawyers also, for you load people with burdens hard to bear, and you yourselves do not touch the burdens with one of your fingers. So that's the hypocrisy. So the lawyers, the teachers of the law at that time, they make the law and they interpret the law and they make more than hundreds of detailed regulations. And they actually know that it is impossible for them to follow these rules. But they impose these rules into the people, just lay people. So all the people, Jewish people at that time, they were suffered under these rules that we cannot even follow. So Jesus was sometimes used very harsh words to them, like a brood of vipers, because of their hypocrisy. Why did he criticize them so harshly? Because he loved the people who were suffering under the burdens placed on them by the Pharisees. But when we think of the hypocrisy of Pharisees and Herod, before we think of this hypocrisy, we have to think about if there is any hypocrisy in Jesus. How do you think about it? Do you think that there is a hypocrisy in Jesus? No, right? No one thinks about that. But why? As a pastor, to be very honest, I am very easy to be hypocritic, because I am preaching the Bible, and I know that it is impossible for me to follow all the Bibles because I'm not a God. I am just the same human as you. And my family knows it very well, right? So during my life, what I do is to decrease the gap between my honesty and my hypocrisy. So until my death, I have to decrease this gap. It's not only for the pastors, but it's the same for you all, right? Hypocrisy happens when our inner thoughts and our outward actions or words don't match. So I'm back to the script. So sometimes, even if we don't want to be hypocritical, we might still end up being that way because we lack the ability. We don't have the power to not to be hypocritical. But thinking of Jesus, he's God, the Son of God, and he has the power to create this universe with one word. So there is no gap in him. So he preached, love the enemies, and he also preached a company with like 3 kilometers, then go with him like 6 kilometers. And if someone hits your right cheek, just give your left cheek as well. Think of Jesus Christ. when he was captured by Roman soldiers, he was tortured. He gave his body to us who are the enemies by our sin. On the cross, he gave his body, he gave himself to us, and he loved us until the end. So he kept all his words, and he's not hypocritical. So when you meet any situation that you have any kind of doubt on God, when we suffer from anything, I hope that I bless you that you trust God as being honest. But on the other hand, Satan, who envies us, is full of hypocrisy. So God is always honest, God is always good, but in contrast, Satan is on the extreme, the other. Because of Satan's nature, he cannot possess, he cannot have anything, but Satan always deceives us. I am studying Dutch theologian Herman Bavinck, who is like 150 years ago theologian, and he explained sin like this. This is short. Sin is nothing. Sin wants to be something. Sin neither has nor ever achieves true reality. So Satan always rules the sin, and the nature of sin is actually nothing. It is easy for us to think that the opposite of good is sin. So we think that sin exists, but actually sin does not exist. Sin is nothing. Sin always exists as the shape of deficiency of good. I will explain it easier. There are many lights here. Light exists here. I am very good at persisting this because I was preaching in the middle school students. And at the time when I studied my ministry in the middle school students, it was like I can say marketplace. So hundreds of students were talking, and later, a few years later, thankfully, it became very atmosphere that they can focus. So I am okay. Just don't worry about me. So sin always exists as a form of deficiency of good. So there are full of lights here. Light exists here, right? But the darkness, actually darkness doesn't exist. Darkness is always where there is no light. You understand what I mean, right? Or one more example, mold. When there are fresh fruits or vegetables, when you don't eat them, and if like 10 days or 1 month later, what do you see? There are molds. They decay, and there are molds. Molds don't exist independently, but always they parasitically, the Parasite, the famous movie, Parasite, parasitically they exist with the vegetable or fruits. So also in the same way, sin exists as parasitically, I don't know, I'm using right way, but anyway, the meaning is being delivered to you. The sin always exists as parasitically with the goodness. So if there is no goodness, there is no sin. But God created this world. Always, the things that were created are always good. So when there is a sin and when there is an evil, it is not God's fault. When there is no good, there is a sin. So Bavinck also says that Satan wants to be like God, but don't be confused. Sin doesn't exist, but Satan exists because Satan is they are the fallen angels. They exist. They rule the sins, which is the they rule the sins, which is non-beings. Do you understand what I mean? Are you following me? Yeah, it's a little bit difficult concept, but it is very important to understand what sin is. So the sin doesn't have power, actually, because it is the deficiency of goodness. But Satan always deceives us as if sin has a power. And it does have, in some sense, power of deceiving. I will do some very simple experiment here. Okay, let's look at each other. Look at each other. Yeah. Every time I do this experiment, the response is always the same. Yeah, we smile and we laugh. Yeah, and there are many various meanings of our smile. What do you see between my person whom I sit beside me? What do you see? Yeah, right? Yeah, you see the glasses? Yeah. Imagine if we haven't sinned and we are the people before Adam who are not fallen, then our perspective of seeing each other is seeing the image of God, which is the most valuable, most beautiful, most gorgeous. But do we really see the most valuable, the most beautiful, and the most gorgeous? Maybe yes, but sometimes yes, but most of the time maybe not. We are very easy to judge each other by our shape, by our outer appearance. So it is proved, right? We are always influenced by Satan, that we are deceived in our view, right? We cannot see what we are supposed to see. Only if we can see the beauty that God intended, God created between each other, then our lives, always what we see will be really beautiful, even though it may look a little bit not beautiful. But still, if we believe in God and we see things through God's creation, then we will see God's image between us. And also in the world, God's creation, we will always see the beauty. So through Mark chapter 8, I hope every one of us can remember this principle. Shortly, I will just share my story a little bit. Actually, I prepared another thing, but I will share my story. This August will be the 8th year of my study. So people ask me, why do this study take so long? Yeah, I didn't know. If I had known, I wouldn't have studied it. Yeah. My second son, who is 7 years old, becoming 8 years old, he was born there. We went to 2016 August, and he was born there in October, 2 months later. And in his first birthday, we found that the developmental process is something wrong. And the second birthday, he studied to walk, which is really late. And he's now 7, and we went to hospital really often. So the place that I speak in English really fluent is the hospital, not school. So do you understand what I mean? So when I speak with doctors, I can explain my son's state really well because hundreds of times I have spoken with doctors. Some Korean people or some people, when their sons, their children have disability, it is very easy for us to hide them because we are ashamed of it. But thankfully, I have met many people who say, my second son's name is Joel. Joel is truly the blessing. And I truly believe it. Even before I met those people, I confessed that Joel is the blessing. Actually, I regard Joel as Jesus Christ in my family because before Joel, I haven't seen the world that already existed in this world of disability. I haven't seen. I couldn't know. But through Joel, now I can see some of this precious world. So through Jesus Christ, I can see the world properly. I am truly thankful and I am hopeful that how God will do His will through Joel and through our family and my study, even though it takes long. And I'm really thankful that Joel can be an excuse for everything. Do you understand what I mean? I had to go to a hospital quite often. I'm really hopeful that God will do His ministry through Joel and through our family. If there is anything lack, if there is anything you think that you don't have, don't worry about it. Because God, who is the source of all the existence, is with you. Don't worry about it. In Korea, as foreigners, you live and you will find many things are lacking. You think that many things you don't have, but don't worry about anything, wherever you are, which situation you are, because God, who is the source of every existence, He is with you, and we can trust Him because He is honest. And He is willing to love us, and He actually loves us until the end as He gives Himself to us. Yeah, let's finish our sermon. Yeah, it's the time that I promised Pastor Ahmed. Dear my friends, I bless you today that God will open our spiritual eyes and ears to remember the true power of our God, who is the creator of this heaven and earth. I bless you to meet again with Jesus, who feeds the hungry people, and to recognize that the God who loves us is with us, reminding us of what we have. God will speak to us, saying, "My beloved daughter, my beloved son, I came to this world for you, from everything to nothing, carrying your suffering and bearing the cross. Now, don't worry about what you think you don't have, but enjoy with me the abundance that I gave you."